Greetings. There can be no way to sugarcoat or hide the inalienable truth that our planet is suffocating on the weight of our and the detritus of our humanity offerings. Over 5 trillion pieces of marine plastic and other pollution entangle our oceans, with over 12.7 million tons of garbage entering every single year, to the point where garbage is surpassing the population of marine organisms and will overtake every living life form in the ocean within the next year or two, within the next few years. Over 700 different kinds of marine species have had evidence of plastic choking their lifespans, including whales, dolphins, turtles, and even the microplastic has ended up in the tuna, sardines, salmon and mackerel that many of us eat and enjoy. It has contaminated the farthest reaches of our abyssal plains, in the depths of the Marianas Trench, and the most remote areas, from the nurdles off St Helena, Inaccessible Island and the Arctic Antarctica, all the way through to Henderson Island in the South Pacific. If we were taking this problem seriously, we would prioritize disentangling our oceans. We would not face waste greater than 130 million tons of bycatch and product wasting in our fisheries every day, which alone were worth over $50 billion. Species could avoid marine biodiversity loss, collapsing ecosystems, and ultimate extinction. The oceans produce over $176 billion globally in fisheries production and food security to over 3 billion people. And that brings me to this podcast. Marine plastic waste is increasingly worthy of global, regional, and localized attention as threatening our blue economy and the sustainable future of our oceans and all other areas, from fisheries and aquaculture to mass tourism and aesthetics, to shipping, ports and global biofouling, to ecotourism enjoyment, to shipping, ports and trade and their operational safety, biotechnology, offshore renewable energy, ocean governance, our marine protected areas, our exploration, our sovereignty, our research and our innovation. More and more nations are rapidly embracing the need to act. On the 9th of June 2018, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, the UK and the EU adopted the Ocean Plastics Charter. A total of 25 nations originally signed apart from the EU, including Rwanda, Palau, Finland, Jamaica, Fiji, Peru, Costa Rica, Myanmar, Cape Verde, Senegal and Nauru. Subsequently, 65 commercial corporations agreed, and these committed to taking concrete, firm action against the scourge of ocean plastic. But it's not just ocean plastic. There's other sources of marine pollution that we have to resolve, and it is burning up really quickly. Indonesia, for example, aims to cut 70% of its marine pollution in the next 5 years and completely eliminate it by 2040, looking at education, reducing, recycling and renewing. Ghana and Vietnam have also signed up to a Global Action Plastic Partnership, where Guatemala, Honduras and the Dominican Republic have invested in biofences. Ocean waste conspicuously appears everywhere. 2015, President Barack Obama signed the Microbead Free Waters Agreement. It has also received the attention of the United Nations Environmental Programme, IMO, and the MARPOL Convention, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and the World Ocean Council, and its private sector-orientated approach. For this podcast, I'm particularly urge the youth and the people and every citizen of this world to realize that the planet cannot take it anymore. We have to focus on how to disentangle our oceans, how to save our marine ecosystems and our blue economy future by purging our detritus waste and other pollution strategies. So welcome to episode 4 on how to save the planet and create our future. Today, I, Dr. Japtal, will be focusing on a number of core critical areas, including not only defining what marine pollution is and the problems it causes, not only identifying current sources and areas, and some of the most guilty parties involved. I'll be also looking at what are the example policies and the gaps in our framework, the successes, the failures, what are the true extent of what can the true extent of marine pollution be out there. Are we also looking at why should we act as the advantages? What happens if we fail to act as disadvantages? What are the risks out there as concerns, and what are the real solutions out there? These solutions can be anything from technological innovation and unusual ideas coming up with the best and brilliant of our ideas. It can mean including stricter penalties in law enforcement and penalties, fines, and so forth. It can mean fundamentally trying to change human behavior. It can also look at what is the most effective way of improving information, communication, awareness, education, and outreach. And moving forward, looking at incentives such as more marine preserves, looking at ecotourism and other incentives to directly invest. How can we make money from it? How can we really profit and benefit from the circular marine plastic waste economy? And what can we do about it? Moving forward, there's no denying that the great global blue economy is of a great importance to our cause and our opportunity. As part of this area, we realize that currently more plastic in the world exists in species in our oceans. The growing costs of plastic costs billions of over $50 billion a year. And if we fail to do so, not only will we have our coral reefs and our oceans and our planets and our fisheries suffer the death of pollution, but from other sources as well. Therefore, marine pollution and other threats is just one of many different risks and causes in this great global blue economy area, and that we need to do something about. There is a global movement out there to protect 30% of the world's marine and land surface oceans by 2030. And recently, even more pressure has been committed to invest in the oceans. More governments, such as the UK, Canada in its electoral cycles, Sri Lanka and various others, have all pledged to do something about global climate change and pollution. More research has been made aware of the species that are directly suffering from it, and initiatives such as the World Ocean Council, the World Economic Forum Uplink Challenge, the EU DigiCirc, and other enterprises are launching increasing a number of competitions, prizes, mentorships, startup funding, training, accelerating, and other research support in order to try and encourage more people to come up with radical solutions to pollution, to come up with sustainable products that are made out of recycled material, and to ultimately find new and creative ways of doing something about it. Then there's the technology approaches such as the ocean cleanup, or increased awareness initiatives such as Round the World Sailing Mission and the Great International Coastal Cleanup, which is coming up recently on the 18th of September, in which hundreds of thousands of volunteers around the world unite just for one day to try and tackle the problem. But it is a problem that we cannot just rely on for one day, but that we have to keep continuing every day. The COVID pandemic has made this problem even worse, with the fact that ultimately over 1.5 billion global face masks are being thrown away, and due to the risk, what people perceive as the risks of COVID infection, most people just carelessly discard them away, irrespective of thinking of what happens to the consequences, and relatively few people pick them up, and there are comparatively few proper recycling facilities and dedicated processes to actually handling this great scourge. So the pandemic has only made things worse, along with the increasing propensity for takeaway and disposable items, such as in quarantine hotels and other facilities where people no longer want to physically touch and rely on things like plastic waste as an excuse. As stated, every year, every single day, over 50 billion rands worth of waste is thrown away just in illegal fisheries full of products that could be recycled. Plastic and other waste and pollution contains other in the smartphones and materials that we use, which are not being recycled, contains rare trace mineral earth elements and other commodities. The more that we use these commodities and stop relying on virginal products such as plastic, wood, paper, and so forth, the less damage we're going to ultimately cause to our environment and the promotion of our economy. And I've already spoken about a number of these things. But there is hope. The ocean cleanup, for example, as we will see in later stages, has promised to, and its interceptor has promised to collect up to 100,000 kgs of waste per day. Others include the Seaburn Project, thousands of youth enterprise organizations, drones, floating boons, recycling and circular waste economy schemes, and other solutions. So what is global marine pollution? Global marine pollution, or marine litter plastic, has virtually no formal definition in international law. However, the United Nations Environmental Programme generally has its own definition, which refers to waste or garbage which is deliberately or unconsciously discharged into the ocean environment, but the main aim is that it's deliberately created by humans and natural processes, therefore disseminated elsewhere. The main core to that you have to remember is that it should consist of anything artificially that cannot decompose biodegradably, is not recyclable, is not being used, and has not been formally processed or treated, but is just dumped. And yet for thousands of years we did not need marine plastic pollution or waste. Until 1950, we did not have marine plastic as a particular concern. Many of our products were made out of paper, glass bottles, paper, recycling, and so forth. And it was a lot more easier to recycle these products. We now need to embrace the concept of extended producer-consumer responsibility to take into account these concerns and actions, and therefore take measures. Right. And we have already seen that there's a huge cost to the marine environment by doing so. Global marine pollution has the consequences of affecting potentially every single part of the ecosystems, and without these, all the way up to the fisheries we eat, the birds, the vegetation, the reptiles, the mammals, the fish, the coral reefs, and all dependent species that can smother, suffocate, disentangle, choke, face lacerations, eviscerations, poisoning, toxic, and other burns and other poisonous activities. And if you ask people if you actually ask people if they'd really want to deal with marine pollution and the circular economy, many of them would say that they would agree to this, provided that they were sufficiently aware of it, they had enough information, that they could protect their ecosystems, have enough information, it was commercially profitable to do so. It didn't cause worse and didn't create worse effects, and that they could actually be dealt with. Let's face it, Marine plastic pollution is not attractive. As I've said, it has many horrible consequences to not just marine turtles and the burning and the choking and the direct effects, but to the way it gets in the way of the livelihoods and lives of many people. It causes poor environmental health aspects, quality of life, is significantly wasteful economically and efficiency-wise, and does not benefit the environment whatsoever, and it is a serious turn-off for tourism. The Wall Street Journal, International Coastal Cleanup Campaign, and other voluntary sources, along with my past research that I saw as a Minguela current youth ambassador and founder of the Blue Economy Future movement, has shown that there are many prominent polluters out there. This ranges from the more famous ones, such as coal, India, Gazprom, Saudi Aramco, National Iranian Oil, and the major petroleum producing firms, to those companies that continuously refuse to use glass, recycling deposit schemes, or other incentives, such as Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nestle, Danone, and others, such as this also extends to including some of the brewers. On the other side, nobly fighting this heroic battle includes organizations trying to keep it awake and apart, such as the Sustainable Ocean Alliance with their Global Blue New Deal, Surfrider Foundation Against the Beaches, the International Coastal Cleanup, as I've said, work on their campaigns every day, government agencies such as NOAA and the Marine Debris Program, the voluntary business efforts and entrepreneurships of those such as Australia's Seabin projects. Then there's other initiatives such as Ocean Conservancy, Trash-Free Seas, Common Seas, Waste-Free Oceans, and other initiatives. I will not read through every single global policy, but just to show that whether it's in Asia, the Black Sea, the South Pacific in Hawaii, Africa and Mauritius, the Caribbean, or Europe, there are a number of different policies and solutions where people have planned to try and deal with the problem of marine pollution. But these, of course, have had varying levels of success and effectiveness. Internationally, however, the real problem internationally is that there are very few standards to actually deal with the problem of marine pollution and the circular economy, whether from plastic or of any other source. Of those that do, none actually have any binding restrictions on individuals, companies, and their respective supply chains. There is very little in international law to suggest that even countries are bound by actually committing to reducing, recycling, renewing, committing to a circular economy, specific waste reduction, specific efficiency, and so forth. And there are, however, individual nations are doing their own approaches. Apart from their specific plans, those such as Finland are focusing on reduce, recycle, renew, and replace. France and Germany are trying to get rid of cosmetics and single-use plastics. Indonesia are trying to see that if you're going to burn waste through incineration and other forms, can you generate more sustainable bioenergy? Whereas Japan are trying a number of different approaches, including trying to get people to cooperate, working with neighbors, trying to come up with more eco-friendlier substitutes and research and innovation, which also boost circular economies, and other solutions. These are just a few examples of countries that have tried different approaches and strategies. From this, we can see that countries such as Russia and China have not necessarily specifically focused on it, but others such as Singapore, Spain, the Netherlands, Korea, Brazil, Australia, Indonesia, and others have all worked out different strategies to try and do something. But we argue that this is insufficient in its own, that we need to actually do something about the core matter. To tend to this affair, we suggest a number of core factors and responsibilities. Above all else, it is important to come up with the proper framework and supporting resources and policies to act in this place. I will not read through every point in this slide, but given that marine litter, pollution and other wastes have traditionally exerted very low fines, there's been very low fines and penalties, and which businesses and consumers are very seldom prosecuted. If they are, they pay very little fines, and the concept of guilt and legal liability does not extend throughout the entire supply chain or process. To resolve this, it needs to increase the incentives to convert to a circular renewable economy, to increase the penalties sufficiently against prosecuting it, to ensure that the appropriate authorities are established with enough training, resources, information, support, power, responsibility and other factors, and that they actually manage to apply that with the base principles of trying to reduce, recycle, renew and cut out the illegal pollution, look at embracing the most innovative technological solutions in human psychology, and doing whatever it takes to ensure that the precautionary principle of acting proactively against risk and ensuring that the polluter pays actually takes effect, so that the common heritage of humankind, our ocean, our lands, our coasts, etc., are defended against this rapid scourge. Continuing on, there are a number of different initiatives that people have taken, from education to information, to trying to get people to become aware of the problem, to ensuring that people ban things financially, get returns of a deposit or money back from volunteering to recycle, to having recycling bin facilities and other facilities available, to ensuring patrols, to hosting events and outreach, to making sure that illegal dumping is not tolerated, and promoting research and information. However, these solutions need to become more personalized, more localized, and more intense in order to really have an impact on people. These countries are... So the question mark is, which countries are acting against marine pollution and which are trying? As we can see, there is a long way to go. This happened only a few years ago, but since then there has been very little work in most parts of Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and South Central America. However, regionally, the Caribbean, Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Mediterranean are looking at this problem. So if you're looking for examples of case study successes, these are just a few examples of primarily youth-orientated initiatives across South Africa, America, Europe, Caribbean, and Canada, to actually show of approaches where people have gone out and tried to encourage generations, but primarily through the younger generations and the youth, to change their behavior and habits, because it can be somewhat easier to try and change youth's habits than many elderly people who have caused this problem, gotten into the pollution state, and show little signs of remorse or willing to change their behavior. So what have each of these initiatives done to change people's minds and behavior? Well, there are a number of different approaches, whether it's actually promoting micro businesses and other incentives to try and come up with entrepreneurs, to ensuring that people are more aware of the consequences and direct costs of actually doing something about climate change, to actually trying to improve and restore ecosystems and recycle goods, to encouraging more research, activation, talking, news and events, and other projects, particularly among the young. However, although there are many examples of case study successes that we can learn from, we can also learn greatly from the problems and penalties and the solutions which actually exist. For example, these penalties include that we can learn from failure only when it exists. One of the real hard problems of failure is, although it can teach us a lot about what not to try, what not to waste our resources and investments, and what needs improving for solving marine and land pollution and waste, it's the fact that there are examples, that comparatively few examples exist of failure and opposition, because people only seem to want, most of the time, people only want to record successes and not failures. The problem is that in certain countries such as Malawi, they have faced opposition from the plastics lobbying itself. Then there are companies such as Heineken, which in Germany have been hypocritically noted for applying bottle recycling deposit schemes in Zimbabwe and Germany, where such things are compulsory by local law, but in particularly in South Africa, where these laws do not apply, then these companies just dump the beer or other beer bottles or other products and do not make any provision for their goods to be recycled easily in smaller quantities, such as smaller bottles or tins, or alternatively impose ridiculous requirements such as saying they'll only take a whole crate of really large bottles, or they provide really low deposit rates which really disencourage people to actually take them back. Then there are countries such as the UK and Australia, which are among the worst polluters of mismanaged waste among the developed world. They have high rates of pollution per capita because they impose ridiculous penalties against recycling garbage, but none such for fly tipping, and heavily restrict the amount that you can put out for formal collection, not realizing that if you don't deal with the problem, it's not going to disappear. Then there's the problem of the cruise tourism industry, which has presented an image of being green, but ultimately has a highly polluting cost, particularly from a pollution point of view, not just as opposed to other sectors, not just a marine pollution. Then there are many parts of Asia, Africa, Europe, America, and so forth, which have yet to embrace proper strategies, plans, penalties, fines, and punishment for actually doing something about marine pollution, marine or land-based pollution, irrespective of the costs. Then there's the true cost of marine pollution. It is really, really difficult to calculate the exact impact of marine pollution, but it is huge. It is growing in significant impact costs, and it is expanding every year. In 2019, the UK Royal Statistical Society said that over 90.5% of all waste has never been recycled, and only 12% has been incinerated. Although the global plastics industry and lobbyists and individual lobbyists in countries and nations may have done tokenistic measures to education reach and insisting that it's people's behavior of not dealing with the problem that is the thing and not the product itself, this masks the fact that they are committing over $200 billion between 2020 and 2025 on dealing with the scourge of marine plastic pollution and other waste. That's excluding the fact that despite the efforts of Ocean Conservancy to reduce over 1.2 million pieces of garbage in 35 years of all sorts, this does not detract from the fact that it is only one day a year that they can actually calculate and work out the costs. And it's not as if we haven't got options. For example, we have to deal with the recycling waste of products that take thousands or millions of years to decompose naturally, as I've shown in the original slide, such as when there are plenty of alternatives that exist. Over 500 billion bottles, for example, do not have to be made from plastic. They could be made from glass. And this wastes resources that could be used from other sectors. Part of the problem with working out quantifying the exact impact of marine pollution and other waste is that we just do not know how much is truly out there, because no one has done a true cost. and very seldom is it properly measured, along with the rates of recycling and other measures. So we'd have to try and get more and more stakeholders committed. It is guaranteed that if we do not act now, by 2030, all up to 100% of every seabird, fish and marine species may suffer some form of damage from marine plastic. We also have to remember that it's not just the species themselves that will suffer from this plastic and pollution, but more realistically, the fact that we as humans ultimately consume this fish, the seaweed, and other products. So whether directly or indirectly, we too will be ingesting this plastic and other microbeads and other pollution that might not end in it. There's also the problem that we really do not know the true impact, costs, and consequences on other people. We do not know the consequences across entire supply chains. We do not know most people do not know how to profit from it, and most judicial systems do not take marine pollution seriously, regarding it as a low-value crime that hardly hurts anybody, irrespective of the huge costs. And yet, marine pollution threatens aquaculture, it harms fisheries, and also gets in the way of real markets which can generate over $4 billion for products in marine biotechnology, or in the circular waste economy is projected to deal with over 600 billion euros in costs for marine businesses. In avoiding the usage of virgin use materials and of recycling waste. It also would cut carbon global emissions, in Europe, by over 450 million tons in the next year, every year, along with 16 billion euros that are wasted in just simply dealing with the problem. In Europe, it was estimated that over 3,000 per vessel, income of over $3,100 was lost due to the damage to fisheries. That's excluding $1,200 on average in cleaning the litter from fishing gear and $250 from just broken fishing gear. UNEP estimated over $200 million just from lobster species that got damaged. And although this census was 10,000 years ago, it just goes to show you how huge these areas are covered in pollution. I mean, we're talking about over 8 million square kilometers of the eastern garbage patch and over 3.6 million for the North Atlantic garbage patch. These areas are larger than continents. They're unofficially becoming known as the 8th continent. It is also no surprise, perhaps, to many of the world that some of the major problems of dealing with marine pollution, apart from countries such as the UK and Australia, which have a chronically poor management rate and a high waste per capita despite impressive systems, that many of the countries on Asia, such as Korea, China, Philippines, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and so forth. This, along with countries in Africa such as Nigeria, South Africa, Algeria, and others, as some of the greatest polluters in the world. So why act against marine pollution and waste? Well, there are many different reasons to do so, and that includes it being profitable to do so, improving our health, our environment, saving our species from extinction, and preserving marine biodiversity, the opportunities from blue growth and blue biotechnology. It includes the chance for additional research, technology, innovation, skills, and career prospects. It also includes the waste of counteracting the waste of resources and simply cleaning up and creating pointless jobs, of promoting tourism after the recovery of COVID, and also ensuring that poverty can be reduced and that, over $120 billion are just sitting there full of products that could be recycled each year. Now, supposing we don't act against marine plastic pollution and other problems, Well, if we fail to do so, we're going to continue to suffer the damage to fisheries, tourism, and so forth. It is also clear that relying on people to simply arbitrarily impose self-interest has not worked. All it's done has led to more and more pollution being produced and very little signs of voluntary behaviour to change people's minds and activities. If we fail to act now, we're going to have to remember that there's over 5.5 trillion pieces of debris increasing every year will ultimately result in more pollution. Plastic is going to very soon, in the next 3 or 4 years, end up with more plastic than fish and marine species alive in the oceans. And this will ultimately cause our ecosystems to collapse. We will have no more fish or species left for the future. There's no point just merely relying on a handful of entrepreneurs to save us, because while entrepreneurs and governments may be trying their best, there are trillions of pieces of garbage out there. There are with billions of costs and resources needed, and many of the solutions out there are only being trialled in pilot stage with very little products and supports. Ultimately, the best solution is to actually cut down the emissions. We also have to deal with the problem that plastic and other forms of these products are so comparatively useful. But no matter how useful they might be, they threaten our development of many different sectors. As I've said, they threaten the economic uses and other roles, including fisheries, aquaculture, fishery tourism, biotechnology, port shipping, and so forth. They counteract our risks to dealing with pollution and so forth. There are also the huge ecological costs that might happen due to the affecting of that could cause the damage, loss, destruction, or devastation to many natural ecosystem functions, including providing the water, food, materials, products, protection or coastal resilience, development of sand, coral reefs, purifying of toxins, reduction of acting as carbon sequestration sinks against global climate change, and producing the oxygen, photosynthesis, and other products and species that we need, and the ecosystems that they depend upon to actually function and flourish. If we fail to act responsibly against marine pollution, the challenge will be whether we can rely on countering this short-term economic, opportunistic, self-interested greed and approach. We do not know what will happen to the survival of our species and our ecosystems. We do not happen to our food security and our health when we ingest this stuff. We do not know that as climate change consequences happen and as more marine species invade, what this will do to uptip the balance. As more and more land gets saturated, more and more of the oceans will get flooded with pollution, and this could cause even more problems and damage and devastation. We also don't know what happens that the marine pollution will happen if we can rely on increasing technology and innovation to save us, because it is an incredibly unknown factor. We do not know whether people are going to be willing and prepared to change if they do not act soon. We do not know whether we'll be able to save our ecosystems. And of course, other risks exist, including the economic and financial risks of continuing to waste resources and countering this pollution when simply the best solution would be not to do it at all. And of course, there are the risks and challenges of needing to train people to be aware of how they can actually profit and benefit from recycling, the circular economy, and getting rid of the marine pollution in the first place. So what are the Moving onwards, what are the core solutions and answers to dealing with this problem? Well, there are many different answers and approaches. These include dealing with the legal and the enforcement side of things, to actually increasing the penalties, threats, and so forth. This includes trying to work out how to change fundamental human behavior and psychology. It includes looking at increasing technological innovation, skills, and solutions. Also, ultimately, other answers to this approach include dealing with the education, training, resources, and other approaches. It includes working out what are the financial benefits and incentives to actually change behavior, including profiting from the circular economy. It includes realizing other economic advantages of acting to deal with marine pollution, such as ecotourism and other forms of sustainable tourism, because nothing really detracts pollution more than a polluted beach. Then there's aquaculture to reduce the pressure and as a means of diversifying against illegal fisheries. And then, of course, marine protected areas to try and sieve out areas where ecosystems can recover from this chronic pollution plight. However, as stated, if we're going to look at the legal and enforcement side of things, we really need to do something about it. We also need to know what else we can do to solve the problems. We need to reach out to other different stakeholders because this problem is too big just to rely on governments, a handful of NGOs and entrepreneurs. It needs to reach to each and every one of us, whether we need the training, the education, the resource, and the capacity to do so. But we must be really willing to act in terms of sanctioning or ostracizing or imposing trade limits and other action against anybody who fails to do so. We also need to increase cooperation and information to actually ensure that this crime is really treated seriously. So what are the solutions out there? Through my work at the World Ocean Council and through Blue Economy Future, along with some various consulting projects, I've been privileged to witness, again, some of the many brilliant ideas and solutions of what is going out there. Of course, these approaches to just handle the existing pollution. The best solution, of course, is to not pollute at all. Even if we were to stop polluting tomorrow, there'd be more than enough material, more than close on 6 trillion pieces worth of debris in order to produce recycled products. However, these solutions can in fact help to deal with the existing problems, and they include everything from traditional patrol, satellites, drones, monitoring solutions, to more sophisticated technological models such as the interceptor, river cleaning, sea cleaners, waste shark, seabin project, the ocean cleanup, the inner harbour water wheel, the Great Bubble Barrier claim, and other solutions, along with converting waste from energy. Additionally, there are many different ways in which it looks like you can make a career in the circular economy, waste recycling economy. Not only does this include helping species to thrive and recover, or working on aquaculture and fisheries as means of diversification, it also includes technological, chemical, oceanographic, scientific, environmental, and economic solutions, along with the approaches to marine biotechnology and materials that can be made from safe products, to education, training, insurance, risk, dealing with the health consequences, and so forth. We really need to... So the question remains, why do we need to deal with these people? Why do we need to tolerate putting up and living with these eco-genocides? have to realize that ultimately the best solutions are to come up with self-interest. Not only do we punish those and ostracize those who are eco-criminals, who ideally should have their own garbage shoved down their throats, we also need to make sure that we support the market for recycled products so that people have every profitable reason to do so. We also need to look to our own self-interest. Seriously, do we really want to be surrounded by polluted beach, plastic, ocean, or waste? We really don't know where, and we don't know where our waste is going to end up if we just simply discard it without thinking carefully about it. This slide shows that there are many different ideas that brilliant people have come up with, and that almost any number of range of products can be made from recycled material and waste, whether fishing nets, plastic bottles, wastes, rubber, and so forth. This includes everything from packaging to clothing to bricks to surfboards to toys, roof materials, shoes, and straws and other commodities. And those are just some of the examples of several entrepreneurs who actually deal with the product. I just provided a few examples based on my experience as an Ocean Youth Ambassador and other areas to show there are many different ways in which, if we want to try and make an impact through information, communication, education, training, and promoting awareness, we can actually do something concrete. Social media, classrooms, petitions, campaigns, more active forms of marches and protests, insisting action as consumers, financial incentives, messaging, boycotts, and other factors to stop it. Famously, I've even taken to those people who create junk mail, who have been completely unwanted junk mail in catalogs, to just take their own garbage and dump it back in the very stores and people who actually give them to us, because we do not need this advertising junk. Then alternatively, there are solutions such as marine protected areas and tourism and other reserves which have already been generated as ways of dealing with the problem. We also need to ensure that our ecosystems recover and survive through rewilding and ecosystem restoration or nature-based solutions once we've actually dealt with the pollution itself, in order so that we actually have species left for the future. Ultimately, we have to look at the real solutions apart from education, awareness, enforcement, nanotechnology, recycling, and others. It's not just about more research, it's not just about more cooperation and getting people to encourage and coming up with new innovative circular economy products. It's about physical solutions such as going out there, seeing what's happening, recording it, collecting and dealing with it, recycling it, and otherwise doing it, or else looking at new technology and biotechnology, nanotechnology ways of actually dealing with it. So in conclusion, we have worked out that over $5.5 trillion are there as a problem. We've seen that pollution is everywhere. We have seen that there are unquantifiable risks and costs to the consequences. But inspiringly, we are seeing that there are people who are doing it. Although many volunteer methods have actually failed to deal with this problem, we are seeing that there is hope and that there are solutions. So we have to ask ourselves, what can we actually do about it? We've said that there are initiatives such as the Clean Seas Project, Great Bubble Barrier, and a number of other core projects which are actually doing really neat things to deal with the problem. But we have also noted that many of these approaches have failed. If we want to reach forward, we have to look at what we can do to solve this problem. Ultimately, we can, as with many causes, we can reach out to those who are most active in this space. This includes those such as Sustainable Ocean Alliance, Earth Justice Foundation, Pew Charitable Trusts, and other stakeholders. It also includes people that are working actively against the problem so we can record and take action against it where we can. We can warn people against it. We can recycle, we can reduce our products, we can renew, we can control behavior and our actions, and we can seriously discourage others. Because we have to remember, we have one planet. We really cannot mess it up. We cannot afford to lose it. We cannot afford to recycle species from the dead, and we cannot afford to do something more about it. So ultimately, we have to decide what kind of a world that we're living in. And it's ultimately up to us. And remember, although purging marine pollution can help avert our species from extinction and ensure oceans and ecosystems remain sanctuaries of prosperity organically. We have to, if we want to act, we must take this problem seriously. We need to ensure that a circular economy and thrives, that there is a market for such products, that we eradicate bycatch waste, and we enhance the financial incentives and to do whatever it takes. We need to celebrate the oceans through mass awareness campaigns, embracing ocean eco-literacy, incentivizing proactive behavior to counter threats. We need to consider resolving the challenges that we face through looking at sustainable marine resources and other financial solutions, and overcome these finite scarce resources. We can act against marine pollution provided that we are willing to actually do something about it. It's all up to each and every one of us to act. If we fail to act, we do not know what will happen. Imagine a world free, an environment and economy based on ecosystem principles. Then consider the reverse. The question remains, is that do we really wish to be immortalized as a generation whose main legacy is that our trash will endure, outlasting us as we become ash, as it lasts decades, centuries, millennia, and aeons, extinguishing life? We need to search within and consider what will motivate each and every one of us to truly change our behavior, our attitudes, and of those around us. Do we really value the world in which we live upon? Are we prepared to fight for it? What can we contribute? And how will we be affected if we act? What happens to us and our world if we don't act? The successful stakeholder will invest in long-term horizons. We will dream and work on the future that we need. Our supply chains, businesses, economy, and individuals must progress just beyond merely reacting to the problems of marine pollution and extractive growth destroying our future trade, but to actually take bold and decisive measures to save ourselves, our species, and everything else from action. Thank you. There can be no denying that these are unprecedented times in our planet's history. And if there's one thing we have learned, it's not to take the world for granted any longer. We are this close to losing everything that we hold most dear. And the planet has given us a reality check. Whether it's increasing climate change related disruption risks from the wildfires sweeping across Turkey, Canada, America, and the Mediterranean, whether it's extreme climate change storms in the Pacific, flooding in the UK and Germany, and all waves of unprecedented challenges, such as the collapsing of many ecosystems and the threatened collapse of the Gulf Stream current. Whether it's surging planet-sized, whether it's surging continent-sized islands of giant plastic floating waste and pollution, oil spills or former tropical paradises such as Mauritius, whether it's food instability, civil unrest, wars, anarchy, strife, disruption, huge swathes of migrants deciding to flee what they seek for sanctuary, whether it's the disruption caused by these and many other events that is causing us to face challenges and many of us to despair, whether it's the uncertainty from the lingering COVID pandemic, technological uncertainty, economic recessions, social instability, religious fundamentalism, and other problems that the world might face. It can be no denying that these may seem like really dark times. But there is a way out. There is a solution. Time does not have to run out if we ourselves are prepared to do whatever it takes to find our way out about it. And more, there are a number of those of us who have found ways out, who are believing in it, and are looking to spread the message and trying to encourage and inspire more people and to get as much into it as possible. Therefore, in these subsequent webinars, will be looking to showcase some of the solutions and hopes and opportunities that are out there in the world today. For there is a new path and new way out of this future if we ourselves can seek to do something about it. And I challenge us all to look deep into what matters. More and more, the world is turning towards the oceans as our potential saviors, to the marine or blue economy sector as a potential to solve us. More and more, there are others looking at rewilding the oceans and ecosystems, restoring our planet, and doing unprecedented moves in climate change, adaptation, resilience, migration, and other solutions, or the waste circular economy, or space, or other innovations and technologies. And it is my honor and my privilege to try and show you some of these movements in the upcoming series of webinars if you seek to be of interest. For those of you who may be wondering who I am, my name is Dr. Jack Dyer, founder of Blue Economy Future, which is a movement and awareness, as well as a consulting firm devoted to not just taking talk, but for talk is cheap, but doing whatever it can to strive into making implementation. And as part of this, I have been privileged to encounter many different strategies and approaches. I have honors in economics, a master's in the maritime economics from Africa, and a PhD in the South Pacific from Blue Economies and Climate Change. I have created a LinkedIn profile, Dr. Jack Dyer, Blue Economy Future SA, and a website, http://www.blueeconomyfuture.org.za. But I'm also looking to expand to YouTube and other interesting channels to show what the opportunities are for so forth. And so I will move on to my first webinar presentation to shout out to the world to show you what's going on. But I'm here to say that there will be more, and please feel free to get in touch, to keep on dreaming, to hope, and to realize that even though it may just seem that the politicians are talking and that there may seem little hope out there, but to remember never to give up, because there are solutions out there. We just not only need to be aware of them and to find them, but also to help support and believe and dream in whatever way we can. Thank you.